This is the Education Business Podcast for consultants and business owners providing services in schools. I'm Claire Riley, and I'll be sharing how to start, grow and scale your education business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Education Business Podcast. So I haven't had a guest all of the second series, and finally I have a guest. It's going to be a thing that I start doing. And naturally, the first guest I'm bringing onto the podcast is Ed, my husband and co-founder at Classroom Secrets. And we're going to talk today about technology because I know technology is on a lot of your minds, particularly something that we found working with education businesses in a mentorship capacity is that often when we have a teaching background, we don't always have the technology background to support that. And where it's been really helpful for us as a team is that I've had the teaching background and Ed has had the technology background. So a lot of the time, not all of the time, and I know that we'll delve into some of the details, we've been able to make sure that the technology keeps up with the business. And so based on the learnings that we've had in our own company, but also the other companies that we work with, I thought it would be really helpful to just talk about technology in your education business. So Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me again.
That was very Yorkshire. Hello.
Hello.
Hopefully you'll be able to understand us if you are from the south. But anyway, so Ed, before I delve straight into asking the questions, some people will know who you are. They'll have heard you speak before. Some people will be new to you. Tell us a little bit about why you can talk to us about technology.
Yeah, sure. So some of you may well have heard me before or know of me. But for those of you who don't, as Claire said, I'm co-founder of Classroom Secrets. So I've been doing that 11 years now, but before that, and for a good chunk of that journey at Classroom Secrets, I worked elsewhere in various technology jobs for a large charity. So I worked my way up through the departments, but I ended up being a solutions architect. So essentially my job was to look at the business requirement and find a technology solution to meet that requirement, which is what I did elsewhere. But that's ultimately what I ended up doing when I worked at Classroom Secrets as well, is actually requirements would come up as we grew the business. We needed a technology solution. We would, look at what's available, put that in, iterate, develop and grow that as we've kind of grown the business. So, that's what gives me my technology background, essentially.
Super, thank you. So what do you think then, as we've been working with other businesses, what do you think are the three main technology gaps for education businesses that you see cropping up time and time again that would just help listeners maybe identify with?
So I could probably actually give you four really that think of the kind of key ones. Often it's about prioritization. So, if you're growing a business, sometimes you're on your own. Maybe there's one or two of you, maybe a team of 5, but your priorities are creating your product, whatever that might be, selling that product, marketing that product, and sometimes the technology just falls down the list of priorities, so it's not always there at the top of the list. So that's the first thing. Often as well, there's skills gaps. So, what as Claire said, in our situation, growing Classroom Secrets, we were fortunate that I had the technology background and had those skills that I could bring to the table as we were growing the business. But that's not always the case and often isn't the case. So often there's a skills gap there. We're all using technology day in, day out, but there's a big difference in using the technology and being able to, set it up, finding the right technologies, etc., to meet your business needs. So next up, I'd say that often there is lots of manual activities that happen. So, things that we do where we're kind of using spreadsheets to build reports or copying and pasting data and moving things around, creating invoices on a Word document every time we need to invoice a customer. All sorts of different things like that happen that you just do because that's the way you know how to do it, but it ends up being a manual task that you're doing repeatedly that takes time. So that's another area. The fourth one really is around having these key areas that can ultimately affect operations. And a really good example is when I see a lot of is email deliverability. How your email is set up above and beyond having an email account is critical really and important. And if you don't get that bit right, for example, there's no guarantee, or there's never a guarantee, but you're reducing your chances of being able to hit the customer's inbox when you're mailing them. So for various reasons, things like that often crop up as well, as a kind of fourth area.
It's interesting because just listening to you talk about all those things, obviously I have seen it as well because I've been in those sessions and we have the same experience at Classroom Secrets. But technology is such a big area, isn't it? We think, oh, well, we've got hiring that we have to learn about and leadership we have to learn about. And when we think about technology, it kind of encompasses all the different parts of your business and it can make it more efficient, can't it, really?
Absolutely, it can. Absolutely. I always view IT technology as a support service that bridges the whole business. It's not just, yes, often it's a department on its own. A large business, definitely, but it's a support service that bridges the whole business. So exactly that. It touches all areas of your business.
Mm. Can you give an example where a business is doing well, but then the technology fails it?
Yeah, I can. And I think our obvious example here is Classroom Secrets. There are multiple examples I could pick from that because of the trajectory of growth that we had. But, I take our website, for example, that we started with, a WordPress website. We start from scratch basically with that, and we just add things to it as we go. And suddenly you reach a period of growth, which means the volume of traffic exceeds the capabilities of that particular website or the platform that's built on. So suddenly a website falls over, it can't handle the volume of traffic. Is one example of that. And actually, sometimes that's the nature of the beast, but sometimes there are opportunities to think ahead on that. Well, actually, if we're going to head into a period of growth, what can we do in advance of that? Other examples might be things like invoicing of schools. For example, in the Classroom Secret scenario, early on we found ourselves in a position where schools would come in and say, oh, can you give us an invoice because we want to access your service? We didn't have a solution per se to provide that, so we was creating them in Excel or Word or whatever, the Office packages that are available. Whereas now we've come a long way on that and we've got proper invoicing systems in place, etc. The proper solutions to meet that requirement. So yeah, there's just a couple of examples of elements that we've experienced in the past in Classroom Secrets.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you do have that technology background and we're not saying that we haven't experienced these challenges either. I think in some senses, say like the invoicing, we've just been able to move through that more quickly and with more knowledge to get it in place. But even with the website falling over, when the website used to fall over, even though you had this knowledge in technology, there were still things that needed to be read up on, and sometimes you're restricted by the finances. So we've definitely had to learn as well, haven't we? But thankfully, we've had more of a foundation to build on. And we do recognise that when you don't have that foundation, or we've definitely seen it where a company will have to rely on a technology company, hoping that they can help, but not really being able to keep them accountable because you don't really understand what it is that you need. That is quite a dangerous place sometimes, isn't it? It's very difficult for an education business to be able to manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the problem sometimes, is linking back to some of the skills gap. And because it's not just about skill gap, it's about almost knowledge gap. I think it's important you're able to address that knowledge gap as well, because it might not be, the instances, for example, where we've outsourced elements of technology, and that's because that's a better fit, because they're able to do it better and quicker. But you still need that knowledge and control internally to understand that what they're doing and telling you they're going to do is correct. I've seen examples before of, people in small businesses going out and saying, oh, we need a service from an external provider, not fully understanding that themselves and assuming that the experts in that area will do the right thing, and that's not always been the case. Sometimes things get done that don't need to be done, or done in the wrong way that doesn't fit that business requirement, and it doesn't always go well. There are also plenty of good examples of where it does go well, and lots of good providers out there have various different services as well, but sometimes it can be that you don't know, so you're relying on an external to give you that expertise that you require for that scenario. It's important to try and plug that gap with your knowledge as well.
And it can be quite scary, I think, as well. I know that there is definitely people in the education business world who have put their trust in somebody who then hasn't delivered. And I think one thing that we found, particularly early on, is that some people are great at talking the talk, but perhaps don't have that knowledge themselves either. and that can be difficult. And I think one of the things that has been really helpful for the businesses that we work with, Ed, is that they're able to use you as a sounding board in some ways, so you can help them know what it is they actually need and what they need to look out for, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what I love to do as well, is to look at the scenario, look at the business requirements around that, and be able to give that appropriate advice and support to be that requirement.
We're obviously talking about technology today, and I think technology can be quite scary for entrepreneurs. We're either technologically minded or we're not. You know, both of us are technologically minded. I just like to pass it on to you because you love it more and you're quicker at it. So Ed has this ability to walk up to something and it starts working, which I find incredibly frustrating. But anyway, doesn't actually have to do anything. It's just all about his aura or something. I'm not really
My
sure.
presence.
Yes, your presence. But why is it important that entrepreneurs do keep up with technology and don't fall behind with it?
First and foremost, it's about running a profitable business, I think, because, you know, sometimes there are scenarios where technology can help you do something quicker and better. Sometimes it's worth that investment. You also have to be mindful that sometimes things can change, and be mindful that you don't double up and overlap on some of these available technology solutions. It doesn't become cost effective at that point, because you can very quickly go, well, I need a system to do contact management, like a CRM system here. I need a system over here that I can send mass mail from and manage payments here and there, and so forth. And before you know it, you're often nowadays the kind of monthly subscription for those soon add up. And often there's overlaps in those systems and things like that. So there's opportunities to save money at certain points, and constantly kind of just are regularly reviewing that.
It's not obvious where you're saving money, is it? Because if you think about our team, in the past, there's definitely been pockets where there's been pushback of, well, technology can do that actual activity for you. And that can be difficult because we can see that as a cost-saving exercise, but sometimes the team can't see that as a cost-saving exercise. They just see that as you taking work away, and what does their job become? And so sometimes it's like a communication piece of, no, then we'll be able to find different tasks for you to do. It's time-saving and cost-saving, but maybe not in the way that people understand.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and often it's a case of, well, technology, in my eyes, is really good at going in and doing those repeatable tasks, the kind of boring stuff that we sometimes have to do in the job, which frees your time up to do the stuff you're really interested in, the real value add stuff within your business. That's always the way I look at it. And I think inevitably you've probably seen and heard and read things about AI taking people's jobs in the press and the media, over the past 18 months or so. It's been a real hot topic. And I don't think that's bearing out. We're certainly not seeing that people's jobs are being fully replaced by AI. It's a tool to help you do your job quicker and better, and allow you to do the more interesting, more value-add stuff, and more time for that as well. So I think that's always the way I try and view it. So the other area around, looking back to your question there, the other area about why it's important to keep up with technology is really about risk, because not doing so might mean that you miss something. Maybe there's a legislation change, maybe there's a recent one like the mail providers tightening up on spam and some extra things that suddenly become more important in terms of setting up your email and things like that, and your domain authentication elements of it. And if you don't do that, suddenly you might find that your emails are hitting spam in this scenario, whereas previously they might not have done. So that's another reason it's important to keep on top of those kind of things, those kind of changes, either in legislation or just generally with some of the technologies out there that we rely on. These mail providers, we rely on their existence to send mails, because when you send an email out, it doesn't work where it just goes direct from person A to person B. You go through lots of different mail providers to land in that person's inbox. So there's lots to think about in that scenario. And that's just one scenario across a range of different technologies that we all rely on day in, day out for our businesses.
To round off then, what would you say that entrepreneurs need to do to make sure that their technology keeps up with the business that they're growing? I think my favourite time to work with people is when they've become the victim of their own success and the work's flying in, like they've nailed the sales and the marketing, but everything else is falling over. And usually technology is one of those things, isn't it? That's, when we really love to help people, but what can they do to make sure that the technology keeps up with their business?
I would say it's all about having some kind of plan to regularly review and analyse what's happening in your business and what growth trajectory you're on, and trying to get in front of that. So it might be that you're expecting to release a new product that might drive significant more volumes of traffic to your website, for example. In advance of releasing that product, you want to be just having a checkpoint in there to say, well, actually, is my website going to handle that? Do I need to do anything differently with that? Exactly like the scenarios we saw across the lessons we've learned is actually, if we'd have been in front of that increase in volume of traffic, if we'd have been in front of that, we'd have done something in advance of that, and ultimately wouldn't have impacted our customers when the website fell over, for example. So, that's really one way of looking at it. Kind of come up with a plan. You know what you've got an idea what your plan is for your business. You know what you're going to be doing. Just think about if those things need some kind of change with your technology. You might be going to a completely different market. Does that mean that I'm going to sell in a different way, so therefore I need to do something different with my invoices? Or do I need a completely new platform, a new website to sell a different product for a different angle of my business? There's all these kind of things that you can kind of link together, really. Just remember to think about technology in your plan, ultimately. I do a lot of work for Education Business Club with other businesses, and that's one of the things I'll do. Yes, sometimes you go in, Claire, as you're saying, they're a victim of their own success and there's things to fix. And often there's definitely some technology things to fix in there. So, I can go in there and help with that element and, give advice and support, and sometimes hands-on practical support as well. But the other thing I can do is to help them building that plan and looking towards the future and what the technology might need to evolve to in the future as well. That's the kind of thing I love to do as well.
And it's not a big commitment either, is it? It's on a fractional basis. It's
fractional, yeah.
Come in, let's get to the details, let's work hard on this particular day, come up with a plan, and then you either execute the plan yourself or I can help you execute the plan. But it's very tailored towards what your business needs, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like you can book me for a consultation for a day, helicopter in, and we'll have a chat, and we'll go through what's the technology like in the business, what are some of the key areas that we might want to focus on, and give you some points, some ideas around what the next step is with those particular areas. And sometimes out of that comes a specific piece of work that I can also support with as well. It's very ad hoc, very flexible to the needs of your business, because we understand that often you're trying to grow your business and there isn't the funds to commit to a longer term, bringing somebody into an IT role in the business, for example. It's costly, so often you just need that targeted support.
What are some examples of the kind of things that you've worked with businesses on in terms of going in and actually delivering something for them after the plan?
Again, I'd go back to this one about the email setup. So we talked briefly about some recent changes earlier on this year by some of the big mail providers, Gmail and Yahoo, etc., who suddenly tightened up on the spam filtering, which meant that you needed to make some changes to your email setup in order to be compliant with that. So I've done a few instances of that where I've worked with businesses to go, okay, what have you got currently set up at the moment? Okay, here's what we need to do. I can come in and we'll do it in a day, and we go, right, okay, we'll adjust these settings to make sure we're compliant with that particular thing. That's one example of where I've done that kind of stuff. Another example is when you see that a company is emailing you from an email account that might be ending with @gmail.com. It doesn't look particularly professional. They might be quite a professional outfit, but it doesn't look particularly professional. So what we can do there is do some work to make sure that the email that arrives from at whatever their company name is, .co.uk, whatever, which is their domain, we'll do the work essentially to support them with that and set that up and make sure they've all got an email account each, because often they share an email account, a Gmail account, they're all logging into the same account. So work can be done there to set that up in a way that means that each individual in that business has their own email address, and that email address carries the domain name. So it's not @gmail.com, which just gives the air of professionality, and it kind of helps them internally to manage their own emails, because their own emails is their own emails. Any shared emails for a customer service type inbox, they still have access to, but it's done in the correct way, really.
Yeah. It is about professionalising, isn't it? Professionalising things. Yeah. And I also think if you don't fix these things, you might have these big ideas that you're going to scale. You might have created this chaos in your business and then you think, oh my word, this is amazing. People need me. And we can focus on the wrong thing, focus on the excitement of being needed and being busy all the time, but completely disregard the fact that some of the things that we've done in our business that we haven't fixed yet because we say we don't have time to fix them, like this, like making sure everyone's got an email address, especially if you've got more than one person replying to customer service emails. If we don't fix that, then we try and scale, we're just going to keep falling over. We're going to waste so much time and money because we've not got the right systems in place. This is why you look at a corporate and they don't do all of these things. Now, you know, it's a big jump. You can't jump there overnight, but it's these small steps you can take because you're never going to be able to scale in the way that you think you can if you don't address some of these technology issues, I think.
Yeah, correct. And it's about risk as well. You know, if you're relying on one Gmail inbox that you're sharing and suddenly there's an issue with that, it gets hacked or it falls over for some reason, it's closed by Google, what are you going to do? There's a real kind of risk there with that kind of single point of failure. It's about the risk mitigation as well. Doing it correctly means it's properly structured. You're using a proper provider of email. Not that Google isn't a proper provider, but it's an individual provider of email, not a business provider of email in that context. It's about mitigating risks in that way as well.
Yeah, I think we should do another episode at some point on risk because you love to talk about risk and it's something on your mind. And I suppose typical entrepreneurs, like you're an entrepreneur, I suppose by default, because you're like, yeah, I'll do this idea with you. And obviously you've brought really amazing things and it's been a great partnership. But you're not the typical entrepreneur in somebody who's going to go, oh, let's do this and do this massive thing. You're thinking, right, how do we do that? So I think that would be really helpful for people because we do need to think about the risks. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we just like to pretend they're not there.
They're always there. Life is about risk. And your appetite and your mitigation. Yeah. I could go on for quite a while about risk, but I won't.
Do I think about risk enough?
Maybe not, but also, it's the partnership that works. Like you say, you know, it's important to have the entrepreneurial spirit that means you go and do and come up with wild ideas and suggest things and kind of be on the edge of innovation and things like that. That's massively important. Otherwise, there's no idea for the business in the first place. But it's about a balance of, okay, but what is the risk here and how do we mitigate that risk?
He's grinning a lot. You can't see it because we're not videoing this podcast. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have a married conversation about this now. But anyway, thank you so much, Ed, for giving us all of your insights and knowledge. I know that it'll be really valuable for people. And
hope so.
If you're listening for the first time, welcome. Hope you have enjoyed it and you can listen to some more episodes. And Ed's going to join us on the podcast again at some point. So we're going to record some more episodes. Thank you so much for listening to the Education Business Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. To get more information to grow your business, sign up at educationbusinessclub.co.uk.